everyone. Can I just hear or have a show of a raise hand or something if everyone can hear me and I'm good to go? Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Anaya. My name is Mira Kavishvar. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions at Loyola Law School, which is LMU's law school. So I'm going to be presenting today for a little bit, and then we're just going to open it up to question and answer. So I have a couple student ambassadors joining me in a little bit. I think they'll sign on around 4:20, and then I have another one coming in around 5:15. So student-related questions, they will be perfect to answer those. Any law school programs, anything like that, I am very happy to answer. So you can use the chat or the raise hand function. For the next maybe 20 minutes or so, I am going to be presenting, so I won't be able to see the chat or the raise hand function. So I'm just going to go through my presentation, and then I will be back on screen to answer your questions. All right. Let me get this set up. Right. So, not too much. Let's see. Okay. So, as I said earlier, we are LMU Loyola's law school, and a couple things to know about us is one, we are located in downtown Los Angeles. So we're not in Westchester or in Playa Vista. We have a completely separate law school campus. If you look at my screen, that's kind of what our campus looks like. We are offering campus tours right now, so you actually can come in and walk around campus to get a feel for what our campus is like. Okay, so what is Loyola Law School? All of you are undergraduate students at LMU, so you know about the wonderful mission we have, the Jesuit tradition, all of that kind of stuff. And that is really carried through in the law school. But along with that, we are a very public interest-oriented law school. So we have over 20 live client clinics on the law school campus. So that means that you are working with actual clients in the Los Angeles community and helping them with different things like immigration, tax. We have a juvenile justice clinic. We have a pro bono requirement that really ties in our mission. We also have a chapel on campus. So lots of different public interest opportunities, things like that. One of the things Loyola is also known for is our practice-ready education. So in everything that you're going to do at the law school, we really want our students to be prepared to go out and practice law. So everything that you encounter at the law school is going to prepare you for that. We have very strong faculty and alumni at our law school, and we have so many different student organizations and programs in place to help students succeed if they go to LLS. So a couple of things to talk about. Programs. We have a JD program, which is your Juris Doctorate Law program. We have a day program and an evening program. That day program right now consists of 305 first-year students, and the evening program consists of 45 evening students. So I'm going to talk about the difference in those programs really quick. Our day program is a 3-year full-time program. That is considered our full-time program. Our evening program is 3 nights a week from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And that is a 4-year program. And this coming fall, we are switching it to 2 nights in, or 1 night in person and 2 nights virtual. So it will still take 4 years to complete, but it will be more remote than in person because we have found that that really works for our evening students to have access to our program. I'll talk a little bit about class size. So the day program is 305 students. We split you into 4 sections. That means that you have about 80 students per section. The evening program stays in 1 section, so that's 45 students. We also have a couple different other programs. So we have a JD MBA. The way that works is you will apply to the law school, and then you can also apply to LMU's MBA program and get your JD and your MBA in 4 years instead of the traditional 5 years if you were to get them separately. With this, you do have to complete your first year of law school, and then you would apply to the MBA program and start taking classes at the MBA school, and then you take classes with both. We also have a JD tax LLM. So an LLM is something that you can get after you get your JD. So it's basically a master's in law. But at our school, we have a program that combines your JD and your tax together. So if you're interested in tax, it's a really great program. And one of my student ambassadors is actually, I believe, a JD tax LLM student. So you can answer questions for that. And then we have a couple different master's programs with your JD. And then a program that is really specific to LMU undergraduate students is our LMU Direct Admissions Program. So I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. So our Direct Admissions Program is for LMU undergraduate students who meet the criteria and are able to seek admission, so apply for admission without taking the LSAT or the GRE. So I'll talk about these exams a little bit later, but I just wanted to give you the information here. So you must have a 3.65 or above cumulative GPA through at least 6 semesters of your course load, and your SAT or your ACT score must be at or above the 85th percentile. In addition to waiving the LSAT and the GRE, a couple of benefits that this program includes is partnership with the university, expedited application process and priority consideration for admission. And then we also guarantee some type of scholarship funding for our LMU Direct students. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the application journey when you are applying to law school, because it truly is a journey. All of you are here now early March and you're thinking about law school. So you're already on that journey if you're here. You may be thinking about how much the LSAT weighs, what format I should use for my resume, personal statements, addendums, letters of recommendation, GPA. I'm going to talk about all of that. And since you're already LMU, you are part of our community, but I will talk more about all of this. So the application file, there's a couple different things that we look at when you apply. The first thing you're going to want to do is make an account on lsac.org. That's the Law School Admissions Council. That is where you will sign up for your LSAT. That's also where you will file all of your application. You'll find your application on there. You'll submit all of your documents. So the application file itself is basically what we call all the documents, right? You have a quantitative aspect, which is the CAS report. And then you have the application packet, which is all your written documents and things like that. The CAS report stands for the Credential Assembly Service. This is a service provided through the Law School Admissions Council. Everybody that applies to Loyola Law School must apply through LSAC and the CAS. With CAS, we look at your LSAT scores. We also will look at your transcripts, and then your letters of recommendation will be submitted through CAS as well. Your recommender will submit the letters directly to LSAC. I will talk more about LSAT scores in the next slide, but a word on transcripts is if you attended any community college or any other type of higher education institution while you were in undergrad, LSAC is going to recalculate your GPA, taking those grades into consideration. So even if you started fresh with a fresh GPA if you transferred to LMU or took a summer class and only the credit transferred over. We will look at all of your grades combined, your cumulative GPA, when we are reviewing your transcripts. The application packet, on the other hand, is the qualitative packet. So I'm talking personal statement, your resume, your addendums, and then other optional statements, which we've been seeing a lot more of them, and I'm going to talk about that. So let's talk about the LSAT first. The LSAT administration has gone virtual, and then I think it's starting to be back in person now. But for now, it's an at-home section or exam. There's 4 sections. So during the pandemic, there were 3 sections, and they are now reintroducing the 4th section. It's a section that doesn't count, but during the exam, you don't know which section that is. Each section is 35 minutes. Also, now for first-time takers, there is a score preview function. So you are able to preview your score, and you can cancel it if you would like to, but that's only for people who are taking the LSAT for the first time. There's also testing limits. So you are only allowed to take the exam 3 times in 1 year and 5 times within the current and past 5 years, 7 times in a lifetime. And canceled scores do count against this. So that is to say, be mindful of how many times you choose to take the LSAT, because even though at Loyola we look at your highest score, we will see all of your scores. We take that into consideration when we are reviewing your application, and there is a cap on how many times you can take the LSAT. There is also an LSAT writing exam. So this is a prompt with 2 options for students to pick. And you have to write a timed 35-minute answer or response to the prompt. And basically, this will open 8 days in advance of the LSAT. Students will take it at home under timed conditions, and then you will submit it to LSAC. It is part of your CAS report, and then we cannot receive your CAS report unless the writing portion is complete. So be mindful of that. We're seeing that some students forget to do that part, and it holds up their entire application. So transcripts, we are looking at the cumulative GPA, which I talked about a little bit earlier. Grade trends. So we are looking at if your grades are trending upwards, downwards. If you have one semester that dipped a lot, I'll talk about addendums, but you definitely want to consider explaining what happened in that semester. We also will accept your graduate school transcripts, but they are not required. So that's just something to keep in mind. When we are reviewing your application for scholarship, we are looking at your cumulative undergraduate GPA. We are not taking your graduate GPA into account. So the application part, the packet. So the e-app is asking for information, your name, your address, undergraduate information, any, right now I can't even think of it, if you're a first generation student, all of that kind of stuff. But then we also ask students for a program that they're applying to. So it's the same application, but you either select whether you're applying to the day program, the evening program, or both. So there's an option that's day or evening. It's day/evening or evening/day. That means that we will consider you for your first option for the program, but that you're open to the other program if, for any reason. So we do have the same application for our day program and our evening program. There is also a question that indicates, or that asks you to indicate whether you're a reapplicant to our program. That's just for our knowledge. And then it asks what your decision was the year that you applied. So, if I applied in 2020 and I was denied, I would select that I'm a reapplicant, not a first-time applicant, and that I was denied in 2020. With that said, we still do go back and look at your previous file to kind of see if the information matches up and then what you have done since your last application cycle. There's a whole section on character and fitness in our application. And those are questions about academic probation, any criminal history, any dishonesty, or anything like that. Those are required questions, and you also are required to attach an addendum if you answer yes to any of those questions. They're very straightforward, and I'm happy to answer any questions on character and fitness. So, quick water break. Okay, the personal statement. We find that students find writing their personal statement very difficult because there's so many things that you can do for your personal statement. And it's really your opportunity to tell us about you in your own words. So, one, the do's. Tell your story in your voice. We want you to be authentic. We want to know who you are as a person, what makes you interested in law school, what makes you interested in Loyola specifically, any adversity that you've overcome, or, an event that really changed your perspective on life. It can really be about anything. What we do also want you to do is check your grammar on your personal statement. We also want you to have it proofread by somebody. That doesn't mean that we want you to have somebody else write your personal statement, but we want you to give your personal statement to someone and ask them, review this for me. What message do you get from this personal statement? And see if it aligns with what you are trying to tell us as the admissions committee. One thing I will say is also that everyone that reviews applications in our office at Loyola went to law school. So, all of us have been through this process, and so we know we've been in your shoes. So I think that means a lot for us when we're reviewing applications. The don'ts that we caution students against is don't use what you see on a website, right? You can be authentic in your personal statement. Don't restate your resume. We have that space for a reason. Your resume is a different piece of your application puzzle. So use your personal statement space to tell us about yourself without regurgitating your resume. And also don't complain or offer too many excuses in your personal statement. We just really want to know your story and keep it really positive. Letters of recommendation. We will accept up to 2 letters of recommendation. They can be academic or professional. That's what we prefer. We evaluate the quality of the relationship, not the title. So, if you know one of the Supreme Court judges personally, that's lovely. But if you've not worked for them, it won't hold as much weight as if you were a TA for your professor in class, and they can speak to your academic ability and who you are as a student and also an employee. So that's the kind of recommendations that we're looking for. Also, please do not ask family or friends. We see personal statements from students' moms or their childhood best friend's parent, and those just really don't hold a lot of weight for us. We really, really want to know who you are as a student or as an employee. And one other thing that I wanted to mention about letters of recommendation, please only send 2, because we get questions all the time. Can I send an additional letter? The instructions clearly state we only accept 2 letters of recommendation. And when we receive emails like, hey, can I send in a 3rd letter, that shows us that students are not following our instructions. And a big part of law school is instructions, rules, that kind of stuff. So there is an opportunity to send a 3rd letter only if you are waitlisted, but in the beginning of the application process, only 2 letters. Resume, addenda, and other documents. So your resume is optional, but we highly recommend it. Keep it 1 to 2 pages in length and standard resume format. You do not need to put it in legal format. When you come to law school, our career development office will help you do that. Feel free to include anything, employee or paid positions, unpaid positions, leadership roles, awards, hobbies, interests, all of that can go on your resume. An addendum. We have a couple different addendums. So most of them are optional. Some are required. Like I said, character and fitness is required. We also do require students to submit an addendum if you have an LSAT score increase or decrease of 3 or more points. So if you got a 161 and then you received a 171 on your next LSAT, you have to explain the situation surrounding those circumstances. Keep your addendum brief. It doesn't need to be 2 pages. A paragraph or 2 is perfect for us. And then we have additional statements. So we have a diversity statement and a first gen statement. We've seen financial hardship statements. So lots of options to attach an optional statement or an additional statement. But the main thing to keep in mind when attaching any additional statements is make sure you are using that real estate really wisely. So if you wrote about your diversity in your personal statement, don't add a diversity statement that is exactly the same, because our time that we spend in reviewing applications is just as valuable as your time in submitting that application. So use all of these different pieces to tell us one big picture. And, in a puzzle, pieces don't ever overlap. So keep that in mind. So at this point, I am going to open it up to questions, and I will stop sharing my screen. If you have anything, really, please feel free to raise your hand. I also see that our student ambassadors are here. So Jeffrey Brum is a 2L, and we have Molly Okamura, who is also a 2L. So I'll open it up to admissions questions first, and then I can turn it over to our students. Anyone?
Hey guys, I had a quick question actually.
Yeah.
So just kind of wondering, when you look at different colleges for law school, what really sets everyone apart? Is it really just a name and past alumni? Or what's the difference between, say, a top ranking law school that's number 1 versus number 10? Is it really just a label that when you come out, you can say, oh, I went to this college? Or is it that they have certain practices or professors that teach it that are better than others? Just to get a scope of, how this ranking system works, or is it really you just kind of buy your way to the top? How does that usually work?
So I'll give you an admissions perspective, and then I think it's a great question for our students who I'm sure applied broadly, as we encourage students to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, the rankings are there for a reason, but I think that students' decision on where they choose to go to law school is very personal. So when I went to law school, I was looking at location, scholarship offers, programs, what programs were offered at the school that really spoke to me. And I was also looking at student faculty ratio. Ours is 13:1. I was also looking at the alumni network. How big is the alumni network? Where did I want to practice after law school? Lots of different things. So those are kind of what I took into perspective. It's also, rankings are just a number. They do change each year. So I think choosing a school based off rank only is not, if that's very important to you, that is what you should do. But I would also look at these other factors that I just mentioned. And if either of my students want to answer that question.
I can chime in and add something. So as far as the actual rankings go, I would say that something that's probably more important is kind of take some of those factors that Mira mentioned in terms of where do you want to practice, and even, if you can pin it down, what kind of career do you hope to have after school, and then get in touch with some people who, you can either find through networking or just, other connections to give you their impression, I guess, people that are in that field that you would like to be in of the school you're considering attending. And I think the response from the group of people who will potentially be hiring you or will potentially be working alongside you is really illuminating for getting a true sense of what the reputation of a school is like. That's a lot better than just a number.
Got you.
Also, Jeffrey, do you want to take this opportunity to introduce yourself? And then Molly, I'll turn it over to you as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jeffrey Brum. I'm a 2L day student and I'm a JD and a tax LLM student. Molly and I were in the same 1L section, D4. So Molly, it's good to see you back on Zoom again after being on campus.
Likewise. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly. I'm also a 2L. In addition to being an admissions ambassador, I'm on the Loyola of Los Angeles Law Review with Jeff also. And I was a business law fellow during 1L, and I'm a representative for the Business Law Society this year. So if anyone is interested in business law or has any questions about law review, in addition to anything more generally about the school, I'm happy to answer those.
And Molly, did you attend LMU for undergrad?
Yes, I did. I went to LMU for undergrad also.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both. Do we have any other questions? Okay, do one of the students want to take this question?
I can start. I'm sure Jeff has a good answer also. But for me, like I said, I went to LMU for undergrad. So I was very partial to Loyola already. And before law school, I worked at a law firm in LA for almost 2.5 years and worked with a lot of Loyola law alumni who all had, were super talented, very knowledgeable lawyers and have great things to say about the school. So both of those were big, compelling reasons for me to pick Loyola. And then also one thing that I always tell students in these types of events and people who are interested in going to law school is the bar pass rate. Loyola has a great bar pass rate, and obviously you don't want to end up at a law school and not feel prepared for the bar and have to push back your studies or anything like that, delay when you're able to start working. So that was a huge factor for me, location. Loyola also is a really old or relatively old law school. So it has a really strong alumni network in Southern California. So those were the main reasons for me.
A lot of my reasons overlap with Molly's reasons, so I won't repeat those. But my biggest reason for choosing LLS was the joint JD tax LLM program. I was really enthused by the chance to get out in 3 years with the dual degrees, and the tax LLM is a master's in tax law. So I did an additional summer worth of classes after 1L, and then I mixed in a lot of tax electives to tackle both degrees in 3 years. Then one other thing I wanted to highlight about what stood out about LLS compared to other schools was specifically the clinical experience that was offered. And I think one of the things that is a real standout about LLS is if you look at the website or other publications that are coming out, there's a lot of tangible evidence of like what the clinics are doing and real results that they're getting, which you potentially don't get at every place you look at. And I thought that was really, I guess, it highlighted to me what the school was really about. It was about a lot of practical experience, which is something I was really looking for out of law school.
Thank you. I see that there is another question. If admitted into the day program, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped part of that question. What are the 4 sections students are broken into upon admission? So it's just really an algorithm that we use that just splits the students into a different section where you will have all of your classes with students within that section. There are 4 different sections, and It's, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and your classes are at different times. Students don't really get any option to select which section they're in. It's really done at random. And then if admitted into the day program, our evening classes offered. So yes, evening classes are offered during your 2L and onwards, which is your second year and onwards. During your first year, we actually assign you what classes you're going to be taking, when you're going to be taking them, because it is that core law school curriculum. Okay, and is the JD-MA program limited to certain MA fields? When in this program, are all of the classes taken at the downtown campus? So yes, to certain fields. So if the Graduate School of Education offers a JD-MA in urban education. So that's what the master's program is. And the JD classes are at the law school campus, but then you would have to travel to the Westchester campus for your other courses. So the law school is only law school classes. Thank you for those questions. Any other questions? Okay, well, I have some questions for our students. So I think I might ask you some to just give us some insight on what it is to be a law student. And, if any of our attendees do have a question from anything that our current students say, please feel free to raise your hand or drop a question in the chat.
Mira, I'm going to interrupt you because we did get one more.
Oh,
it's
okay.
in the chat, and it says, can you quickly cover what to expect regarding concentrations within the school?
Oh, yes. Okay. So concentrations. We have 11 different concentrations at our school, and they range from business law to sports and I think it's entertainment and new media, to international law. So basically, the way the concentrations work is during the first year, you're going to take your first year courses, and then you can declare your concentration during your second year. And there are required courses that you would be required to take in order to fulfill the requirements for the concentration. And upon graduation, that concentration would be noted on your transcript. So when you're applying to any jobs or anything like that, the firm or the corporation would see that you have a concentration in public interest, international law, anything like that. There's also experiential requirements that are required for the concentration. Of course. Okay. So for Molly and Jeffrey, what does a typical day look like for you as a law student?
I can go first. So I try to stick to as much of like a 9-to-5 schedule as possible. And I think that is, before I went to law school, that was one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I received, was to really treat it like a full-time job. So I'm a morning person, so I'm usually up early, and I like to, like Jeff and I, since we were in the same section, we both had afternoon classes. And so I've just kind of gotten used to that schedule. So I like to keep my classes later in the day. So I wake up pretty early, get my reading done for that day for whatever classes I have. And then before class, I'll work on any like writing assignments, studying, going to office hours, anything like that. And then normally have classes in the evening. Like this semester, I have class Monday through Thursday, and I'm done at 8 p.m. And then go home. Sometimes if I have a little bit more work to do, then I'll finish up in the evening, but usually try to like go to sleep early, go to the gym, hang out with my roommate, keep it as like balanced as possible.
This is going to be a good bit of perspective because unlike Molly, I do not stick to a normal 9 to 5 schedule. I really like to bike ride a lot, and I stacked my classes on Tuesday and Thursday this semester so that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I have really the morning to kind of get out and ride my bike as I please. And then in the afternoons and those days, I try to tackle all my classwork, get anything done for law review. And then I'm, I guess working on a couple other things, but I guess what the typical day is really based on what I've sat down and planned out for, 15 minutes at the start of each week. But like Molly, it includes, a lot of reading for the individual classes and making sure I'm prepared to engage with the discussion that's going on. But I have found that for me personally, the 9 to 5 approach does not work. And I appreciate having the mornings to myself and really kind of sitting down and digging in around noon.
Right, thank you. So as you can see, different things work for different students. So really it is just the way that works for you can bring a lot of success to our students. Anyone have any questions? I don't want to just, take up the time, but happy to ask our ambassadors more questions. Yay. Okay. So Molly and Jeffrey, I'm sorry. Looking back, what one thing would you tell yourself to do or not to do before law school?
Molly, I can take this one first. So what I would do before law school is school tours if you can. And I think the reason I would recommend doing school tours is just because once you're there, you get a good sense of, I guess, what the school is like in terms of making an admissions decision. And then what I would say for not to do is actually after you've been admitted and decided to go to law school, do not under any circumstances try to get a leg up on your class before you start law school. And the reason is because the professors have all designed their curriculum to make sure you're getting the information you need to succeed in their class. So any of that, I guess, work you may try to do ahead of school to get a leg up on the class will largely get washed out just because at the end of the day, the professor is really going to tailor your experience in that class. And it's really hard to do anything additional outside of what has been tailored for you to really get a large advantage.
I 100% agree with Jeff. I would also say try to speak with people who went to law school, whether they're just lawyers that you know or students like us in these admissions events, just to kind of get a gauge of what your schedule is going to be like, what your course load is going to be like, because in the beginning, it's very different from undergraduate studies, and I think takes a lot of organizational skills just to figure out your routine and how to read for class and how to study and how to outline. So I found it helpful to kind of talk to attorneys and get a gauge of just what exactly to expect. And then I also totally second what Jeff said about not trying to go overload it or anything. I know some students will do pre-1L courses, or there are books and podcasts out there to try to give you a leg up on the substantive material. And I think it's best to just kind of chill, take a couple weeks if you can to check out, enjoy time with family and friends, get outside. And I think that's kind of the best way to prepare.
Oh, that's really, really great advice. I'm also dropping the Visit Us link. So if any of you would like to sign up for a campus tour, that's there. We also do have an event coming up next week on Wednesday. It is top 10 tips for 1L success from some of our professors. that I think is a really great event to check out if you are able to. It's from 12 to 1 on Wednesday, March 16th. Yeah, so any other questions for our students, or I have a list? Okay, so what is one thing that surprised you the most about law school? I'll give you a minute.
So the thing I think surprised me the most about law school is that if you really wanted to, you could probably leave law school without doing a ton of writing and with no real practical experience. You do a lot of substantive law while you're in law school. But if you think about what's going to happen on your first day at the job post law school, people aren't going to be asking you a lot of questions about substantive law. They're going to be asking you for output that has an answer in it. And I think that's one of the things that LLS does a really good job of, is providing opportunities to get that practical experience in terms of how do you take the substantive law you've learned in the classroom and actually put it into practice. So I guess the surprising thing for me was just that law school was not packed with opportunities, on its own necessarily, such that you could get a lot of that experience that you can employ on day one of your career. But I do think LS has a lot of those opportunities if you seek them out and sign up and find them for yourself.
What surprised me the most was how collaborative everyone is in law school. I think I had this perception that I think a lot of other people do too. You always hear that law school is like super competitive. And while it is competitive because you're graded on a curve, which is unlike, undergrad or other studies, it's a very collaborative, friendly atmosphere, at least at Loyola, amongst students and professors. Like I never felt like I couldn't email a professor or go to office hours and talk to them about the class. Or, I mean, Jeff and I during 1L, our whole 1L was over Zoom. So I never felt like I couldn't just reach out to a student who, I'd never met in person and be like, hi, like, I have a question about something that was said in class, or a question that you asked, or do you want to meet to study together over Zoom or whatever. So that surprised me, just how everyone is really willing to work together and help each other out.
Yeah, I definitely think what Jeff said is that the opportunities are there. But one thing I think that was really different from law school and undergrad is that it's, the students really have to seek out and take initiative for what they're interested in, and, kind of venture out of your comfort zone. And I think that's really where student organizations help, because you do get to interact with upperclassmen that kind of become mentors to students on what they did, what worked, what didn't, all that kind of stuff. So really, really great insight, Molly and Jeffrey. Does anyone have any questions on any of the different things we've talked about? Because, we've covered a lot of student life. No. Okay, well, I have a question. Molly or Jeffrey, can one of you kind of explain what law review is? Because I know you mentioned it, Molly, that both of you are on it, but what is law review?
Molly, I'll let you take this one.
Okay, so law review, the school has several different law reviews, which is basically three: Entertainment International and Loyola of Los Angeles. And the law reviews basically do legal research and publish articles in that research about new developments in the law. So the articles can be written by students or professors, and then the staffers who work on law review basically double check the articles to verify that everything that they're saying is supported by the material that they're referencing. We check for technical accuracy. So it's kind of similar to like if you were to work on your school's newspaper or something like that, but they're all legal articles.
Here, I will also add that I think one of the things that's really cool about law review is that all of them are entirely student-run organizations. And if you think about the type of scholarship that's being published, it's something that is citable in court. So it's really interesting to think that you've got a student-run organization that is taking pieces written by practitioners and other students, and it's being used in an influential way to shape the way that the United States laws work.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Students really have weight, I guess, in what they're doing in law school. And one thing that neither of them mentioned, but law review is really, really highly looked upon when you are applying for jobs. So it's something that, we're very proud of them for, and they worked hard to be on law review. So it's a really great thing to aspire to. Anybody have questions on law review? We also have a couple oral advocacy teams on campus. So we have a moot court, which is appellate level law, and then we also have some trial advocacy teams that are more trial level. So if anyone's interested in oral advocacy, really, really great programs available at the law school. Okay, so I do have another question. What is the culture like at Loyola Law School, and what are your relationships like with your classmates?
I can start in this one. So Molly's already touched on the competitive nature of law school. And I mean, the curved grading does make it competitive, but the way that I would describe the culture at Loyola is almost like a healthy competition. So it's not so much that the students want others to fail. It's more like I want Molly to succeed, but at the same time, I definitely want to succeed just like a little bit more than Molly. And I won't be shy about saying that, even if we're in the same room. But outside of the competition, I think the relationships with classmates are really a huge bonus for how Loyola operates as an institution. And it's a grouping of people that all kind of want to get together and help each other. And I think that's really infectious in terms of, the tree that's over Mira's right shoulder. You'll frequently see people sitting out under that, talking about, what's going on in class on the 10-minute break. But then even outside of the, substantive law school type relationships, I have some really fantastic friends from being in law school for a year and a half. I mean, we've just gotten done holding surprise birthday parties for 3 of my classmates. So we're not only learning together, we're also spending a lot of time outside of school together and hanging out and really getting to know each other on a personal level. So the culture is fantastic at LLS. I would say it's a big selling point. I think it really comes through if you spend even a few minutes on campus just with seeing people interact together.
Yeah, I touched on this earlier. As Jeff said, I think it's very collaborative. I totally agree. There's definitely healthy competition, but you never feel like anyone's gonna try to sabotage you or steal your notes or like some other crazy stories that I've heard. And I think also something that I've found really comforting is how supportive upperclassmen have been too. Like when I was a 1L, even talking to alumni, like I touched on, and current 3Ls, like for instance, Loyola has a Facebook group where you can purchase books from other students. And there was actually a 2L when I was a 1L that I bought a book from. And he had a couple of professors that I had 1L, and he, even though I like literally just bought a book from him, he sent me an email with like some pointers for each of the professors and was kind of like, this is the type of style that this professor likes, and this is what you should do for this class. So upperclassmen are more than willing to help you out and give you their 2 cents if you want it. And same with professors also. Like I've never felt intimidated by a professor or anything like that. Everyone is very willing to help each other out.
Thank you for that. Okay, my next question. Oh, okay. What is the percent of people of color? What does that look like in the classroom and the professors? So it's a really great question. I'm going to pull up our most up-to-date class profile and drop that for you. We do have 42% diversity. I do not have that broken down into actual different groups, but I just dropped our JD class profile. And then as far as faculty, so one thing that I will say, and this is about the legal profession in general, it has historically been male dominated. But we are now seeing a trend, and if you look at our class profile, there's actually more females than males in our incoming class. And there's 230 females and 122 males, and one that did not indicate. And then we're also seeing that in our applications. So the trends really are changing in diversity. And I think I can also say that from having worked at other law schools, I really think that Loyola Law School is very representative of the community that surrounds it. And LA is very diverse, not only in race and ethnicity, but also in socioeconomic status and things like that. And I think that's really evident in our entire body on campus. That's a really great question. Okay, so what is Loyola's, what's the best kept secret at Loyola?
So the best kept, I guess, I don't even want to say it's a kept secret because it's not really a kept secret, but maybe something that's not going to immediately shine through during the admissions process or before you're a student at the school is the willingness of the Loyola alumni base to take cold emails and phone calls and talk to current Loyola students and get them connected to the right places. And I think that's true for people you meet on LinkedIn, but it's also true if you go to a professor and you tell them that you're really enjoying an aspect of their class, the professor is going to connect several dots with their network in terms of like, oh, I know someone that practices law that focuses on this substantive area. You should talk to them if you're interested in this. They went there, here's the year they graduated. I actually taught them, X number of years ago, bring up my name to start the conversation. You'll have a common thing to talk about. So it's really the willingness of the Loyola network to work with each other in terms of making connections and figuring out, kind of what opportunities are available for Loyola students and alumni.
I totally agree with Jeff. I think some of the mentorship opportunities that Loyola provides, especially for 1Ls, I think, like I was a business law fellow, and so I received an alumni mentor through that program who was always willing to take calls with me. Like she looked at my resume before I was applying for summer jobs. And then also as a first generation law school student, I received a mentor through the school from that as well. And so I think some of the programs that you're involved in will be happy to pair you with people. And a lot of people don't know that. And getting advice from people who have been through law school already is really, really invaluable. So I definitely will encourage students to not ignore those emails and opportunities.
I'll add one more thing that's on more of the fun, non-substantive side. There is quite a bit of fruit that grows around LLS's campus that you can pick and just have during the day. Like for example, I think there's 4 kumquat trees right outside the library. So it's a nice sweet or sometimes a sour treat depending on the season to stop and get one of those during the day.
Yeah, so that garden was actually the project of our campus operations director during COVID. He planted, different planters I was taking home like eggplant and cucumber and all kinds of vegetables over the summer when nobody else was on campus. So they've kind of turned it into a community garden space, which is pretty cool. So I think we're going to give our students about a 5-minute break, and I'm going to show you all a campus video of our Loyola campus, of our law school downtown campus. So Molly, Jeffrey, if you guys want to grab some water or anything, feel free to turn off your videos and take a break, okay?
The whole thing from the beginning was trying to create a sense of place that people studying law would feel like they were doing it. So the idea was to try and engage and give some kind of a pride of place that the people could relate to and feel like I'm in a law school and the buildings represent that in some way. The most important thing about the environment was to make the students feel like their topic was addressed by the environment they're in. So it's not the lobby of the Sheraton Hotel, it's something else. So I think this was about modesty, the power of the law, what it meant. I think it works. I think over the years I run into graduates of this place who are now fancy lawyers. They tell me this was an important experience for them. I've always had historical elements in my work. This was inspired by Rome. The Roman Forum with the columns, freestanding, the residual of the temple. It was the simplest thing to do. We did it in phases, so the Orange Building was built first. The symbolism of the law, I reduced it as far as I could, and it became columns. For very little money, you could just click and get the sense of what was going on here. Klaus and Kosha Oldenburg, years later, they remembered the precariousness of the law thing. And so they made the toppling ladder as a symbol of the precariousness. You go to Rome and you see the government buildings. They're plaster and they're all painted warm colors like that one, the peachy color, and this one. And then there's light yellow. So the color on there now is defensive because of fading. So whoever decided which color it was wanted to be sure. So when it fades, it'll be the right color. Well, it was simple at the time. It still holds up. Its simplicity is still here. It's not fancy materials. It's not suggesting that you need marble courthouses and things. You can talk about the law under a tree like the ancients did. Well, that was the idea, that it was a tree of learning. It was a small tree when I planted it, so it didn't look like this. But now you can see how it works. You can sit here and use it kind of as a classroom. No, I thought it would be a hangout place and symbolize the center, the heart of the campus. And it was the tree of learning, the simple idea of teaching under a tree. The facades of the building were important to create the sense of a place. Even the garage has cutouts like the windows here to make it feel less like a garage. The tradition of classical architecture is that they have a significant entry stair that's expressed on the building. It is the way people circulate and meet each other. So these stairways are meant to be meeting places. They could have been inside. They could have been placed inside the building, but I expressed them on the outside. The thing about building is it can be lifeless. So how do you make it a living thing? How do you give it feeling and form and passion and love and all those things that I worry about? This was one way of doing that. Certainly, you make a stairway to heaven. There's always the reminder that you might not get there. And it seemed like Icarus was a nice symbol, which we all use in all of our lives, as the symbol of don't be too hotshot because you'll overstep yourself. It's all about carrying forward the idea of a town that's built for law, because there was nothing like it. And I think that's what we were trying to do in the total, make it a user-friendly place where people would hang out and talk and argue about their classes. The first time I went in that classroom, there was a class in session, and I walked in, and they all stood up and applauded me. I loved that. I'll never forget that. It was a nice thank you.
Okay, so that was our campus. And that was Frank Geary, who is a world-renowned architect who actually designed Walt Disney Concert Hall as well as our downtown campus. Does anyone have any questions for me? I've asked, a lot from our students. So do you have any burning questions? Anything you want to know about the law school that we haven't covered? Okay, well, so back to Molly and Jeffrey then. How do externships work at the law school? And can anyone have access to externship opportunities? Can you also tell us what externship you did over the summer, or if you're still working right now or anything like that?
I can start. So externships are basically just internships. It's where you are an extern for a public interest company or a judge. Like I, for instance, between 1L and 2L, was an extern for a federal judge at the district court in Orange County. And so they're, I think, always unpaid, but you can get class credit for externships. So I got credit for my externship over the summer and just took a class like in conjunction with the externship where we met once a week and kind of discussed what we were doing and filled out like journal prompts about what we were learning. And I think, can anyone have access to externships? During 1L, I don't think anyone really externs during 1L, but during 2L and 3L during the school year you can, and then the summer between 1L and 2L you can, or the summer between 2L and 3L.
So I unfortunately do not have any personal experience to share about externing or interning to date. I actually took class in between my 1L and 2L summer to accomplish half of the tax LLM program. So I will completely defer to Molly's response.
Right. Thank you, Jeffrey. I forgot that I would see you on campus during the summer when we were giving our tours. Always coming from class and giving a campus tour, which we really appreciate. Yeah, and as Molly mentioned, that most students don't work during their first year. That is something that we really encourage students to not do. Is if you are a full-time student, we encourage you to focus on your first year courses. And then during your summer and onwards, so your 1L summer and onwards is when you can start externing or, working in clinics and different things like that. And the reason for that is really we want students to focus on their first year of law school and really get solid grades, because that's going to set up the rest of your career, right? A lot of your job is going to depend on your grades in law school. So that first year is very important to set that foundation. There was another point that I wanted to make, but I don't recall. So, okay, any questions on career development or any jobs or anything like that? Okay. What advice would you give to students to manage their first year of law school?
I can start on this one. So as far as managing the first year of law school goes, I think a 15-minute period on Sunday night or Monday morning before class gets started to plan out what work you have to do for the week and when you're going to do it could not be more valuable. And the other piece of advice I would give about 1L is give yourself enough time to actually do the reading that's assigned and accomplish all of the reading that is assigned, because there's a reason it's assigned before class. It's not just because it's, it's not just because it's supposed to be a time pressured environment. There is a substantive point that I think comes from everything you read during your 1L year. And if you give yourself enough time to do it, it can actually be enjoyable as opposed to stressful. So that's where that 15-minute period comes back in terms of just making sure you actually do have the time to accomplish what you want to.
Yeah, I think just being as organized as possible is really key, and that is something different, for everyone. For some people, it's sort of a chaotic organization method. For others, that means like sticking to a schedule. I like to set a timer on my phone and we'll do like 45 minutes, put my phone away, work on one thing, give myself a 15-minute break and kind of like work in intervals. So yeah, I would say just figure out sort of what organization method works best for you, and stick to that as best as possible. And like I said, kind of sticking to a 9 to 5, treating it like a full-time job is what works for me, but it's different for everyone.
Thank you. And a follow-up question to that is, everyone always speaks about how difficult the first year of law school is. Was it really as difficult as you expected or heard?
No, I don't think so. One of the things I was really, I guess, maybe surprised about is this is obviously personal, but I didn't really feel like there was maybe even any, but definitely if there was any, it was very few concepts that were so difficult to wrap your mind around. It was more so that there is just a tremendous volume of information, and you get into this mode of kind of needing to learn how to think like a lawyer, or maybe better put, think like a law student at this stage. And it's not so much the individual concepts are incredibly challenging, but it's really about taking this mass volume of information and learning how to appropriately apply it.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think substantively, your first year, in my opinion, wasn't super difficult. Like, I agree with Jeff. There were maybe a couple concepts that took some extra work and like time in office hours to really wrap your head around. But it's really the volume of information that you have to digest and memorize, and more so, more importantly, be able to apply. That's kind of what is difficult. And then the kind of the mental difficulty and stress of being graded on a curve, which was unlike, at least for me, like it wasn't graded on a curve in undergrad. So that's what I found most difficult, but substantively, I didn't think it was like particularly challenging.
Thank you both. And I see Joanna has joined us. So Joanna, please take a minute to introduce yourselves, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much. I just got out of class a couple minutes ago, but my name is Joanna and I'm a 3L here at Loyola. I'm a day student. I'm primarily focusing on entertainment law right now, and I've really enjoyed my time here at Loyola, and I can't believe that it's going to be up in a few months. So if you guys have any questions about entertainment law or anything, feel free to let me know.
Yeah, Joanna, actually, can you tell us, so I've asked our Jeffrey and Molly a list of questions already, but can you tell us a little bit about your interest in why you chose Loyola and what you kind of looked for in a program?
Sure. So for me, the main reason I chose Loyola was because I was working at a studio in their legal department. So I was already really interested in Loyola. And so I had a lot of colleagues that went to Loyola that worked at the studio, and they told me how great it was. And then I just researched it for myself, and it seemed to have a really awesome entertainment law program. So that's primarily why I chose Loyola. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
I think that you answered it.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah. And can you tell us about some internships that you held while here?
Sure. So during my first summer, I interned at CMG Worldwide, and that was really interesting. They primarily focus on representing the estates of various sports figures and music artists, actors, and their clients were like Aaliyah, James Dean, so people like that. So I thought that was really interesting and a really good intro to copyright and trademark law. And then last semester, I worked at Film Nation Entertainment, and so they're an independent film company, and they primarily focus on like award-winning movies and stuff. So most recently, they did Spencer and Red Rocket, movies like that. So that was a really interesting way to see how the independent film business works, because it's a little different than the rest of the film industry. So I really enjoyed that. And then last summer, my 2L summer, and now in the spring, I'm working at Fremantle in their scripted business and legal affairs department. So so basically what I do there is I focus on the TV side. So it's a great contrast to last semester's internship, and work on writers agreements, directors agreements, actor agreements, all that kind of stuff. And I have a really great boss there who takes the time to like thoroughly explain things and stuff. So it's been a really wonderful learning experience.
Wow, that's really impressive. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a really strong entertainment and new media program at the law school. It is one of our concentrations, and we also do have a fellowship for the entertainment. That's the entertainment fellows. Molly mentioned that she's a business fellow, so lots of different opportunities at the law school. Okay, I'm going to ask all of you one more question. And again, if any of the attendees do have questions, please drop them in the chat. You know, this is your time, so I want to make sure that you're getting questions answered. How did you manage your housing and or roommate search? What advice would you give to students about where to live? And that's for all three of our ambassadors.
So I can start. So I grew up in LA, so I was pretty familiar with downtown LA and some of the other areas. And for me, what I was really trying to avoid was a really long commute, because I had to do that during my previous 2 jobs. And so, and especially with just how time consuming 1L can be, I found that living close to campus was really a great benefit to me. I lived about 10 minutes away, and so I could easily access campus and had extra time to read. So for me, that's what I really focused on. I didn't have a roommate or anything like that. But I know people who did, and they found them through just various different avenues, or sometimes they just like knew people that went to the school and stuff.
I can go next because I think my answer is a stark contrast from Joanna's. So I'm not from the LA area. I'm from Atlanta, and I actually moved to LA to start law school. So the advice that I would give as far as housing or roommate search is just whatever amount of time you think is sufficient to accomplish your housing and roommate search, just like go ahead and double it. LA is a large place, and it's always good to give yourself more time than you probably feel like you need. But if you're coming from out of state and don't have a tremendous amount of experience with the LA area, I put all of my stuff into a shipping container and came and rented Airbnbs for 2.5 weeks and just kind of bopped around neighborhoods and figured out which one I liked the best. Like Joanna, I guess I had a high priority of living at a place where campus was accessible. So I'm probably one of the rare Angelinos that does not drive. So I was limited to where I could either bike or take the train to school. And that's another point about LLS that I'll throw in now, is that we have a great, it's really easy to access campus from the Red Line on the Metro. But yeah, just, lots of additional time to kind of figure things out and really make kind of a priorities list in terms of what's important to you for where you're going to be living.
I guess we're getting good variety on the answers to this question. Because like I said, I went to LMU for undergrad. And so I was living in LA, had been in LA for several years. So I just lived with friends who I was living with previously. I lived on the west side. So, well, I guess we were in school during 1L remote, so we didn't have to commute to campus. But I know a lot of students take public transportation who don't live close by, and the school actually will subsidize part of that. So I've definitely heard from people like living close is really helpful, but if you don't live close, the school can definitely help in terms of like offsetting the prices and that kind of stuff. And then in terms of finding a roommate, the Facebook groups are really helpful. Most sections will start like a group me over the summer with all the students in that section. So maybe like reaching out to students on there. I saw students doing that before we started. So yeah, those would be my recommendations.
Perfect. Thank you all for answering those questions. So I think at this point, if nobody has questions, I'm going to go ahead and give our presentation again for any of the students that may join. I just want to make sure that everyone has the information. So if you do have questions, drop them in the chat and I will answer them at the end of our event. And also, I want to thank our student ambassadors for joining us today and taking time out of your evening to answer any questions that the students had. So thanks again. Okay, so welcome to our event today. My name is Marika Vishvar, and I am the Assistant Director of Admissions at Loyola Law School. So I just want to talk a little bit about our program, which is, we are LMU, LMU's law school, but we are located in downtown Los Angeles. So we are a completely different campus in the heart of downtown LA, very close to Crypto.com Stadium. And, you know, we do share the same social justice mission and values as LMU, but we are the law arm of LMU. So a lot of different things set us apart. I think one of them is our public interest program. We have lots of pro bono opportunities, and we actually are the first law school that had a pro bono requirement in order for our students to graduate. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our different programs and then the application process. We have 2 different programs at the law school for our JD program, which is the Juris Doctorate program. Our first is the day program, and then our other program is our evening program. So our day program is a full-time 3-year program. The end classes are during the daytime. Our evening program is completely in the evening from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., 3 nights a week. We are transitioning that to 2 nights virtually and 1 night in person for the coming fall. We also do offer a JD MBA program with the business school, a JD tax LLM. So an LLM is a master's of law, which you get after your JD. You can do that in conjunction. If you were here earlier, our student ambassador, Jeffrey, is in the JD LLM program, or the tax LLM program. And then we also have a JD MA program with the School of Education. So those are a couple different programs that you can apply to at the law school. We also offer LMU undergraduate students a direct admissions program. So that's something I will talk about in the next slide. As an LMU undergraduate, there is an advantage for to apply to Loyola Law School if you meet the criteria of 3.5 GPA through at least 6 semesters of coursework and an SAT or an ACT score at or above the 85th percentile. If you do meet these criteria, you do not have to take the LSAT or the GRE in order to apply. So the other benefits of this program include partnership with the university that encourages accomplished students to remain with the LMU community. You will also have an expedited application process and priority consideration for admission. And finally, you are guaranteed scholarship if you are an admit of the LMU direct admissions program. So the application process, it really is a journey. By attending today, you have already begun that journey, and lots of different things to consider. So how do I join the Loyola Law School community? How much does the LSAT weigh? All those kinds of questions are things I'm going to answer right now. The application file. So the application file consists of 2 different packets. One is the CAS report, which is the Credential Assembly Service, and the other is the actual packet itself. So all of this is done through the Law School Admission Council's website, which is lsac.org. On LSAC, you will create an account and you will find all of the schools that you will want to apply to. The CAS report is a different service through the Law School Admissions Council. It's a Credential Assembly Service, and they gather and compile all of your quantitative factors for us. So your LSAT score, your transcripts, and your letters of recommendation. The application packet itself consists of your personal statement, your resume, any addendums that you choose to submit to the law school, and any other optional statements for the law school. So I'm going to break down all of these different pieces of the application file. So the LSAT is the first and biggest. Our LSAT is right now the LSAT Flex. It is administered at home. There are 4 sections. So during the pandemic, they had reduced it to 3 35-minute sections. They have now reintroduced a 4th section that is experimental. Students do not know which section is experimental, but each section is 35 minutes. There's also a feature called a score preview for the first-time takers. You're able to preview your score and choose if you would like to cancel that score. And And finally, LSAC has imposed testing limitations on the number of times students can take the exam. So canceled scores do count against your testing limits. You are only allowed to take the exam 3 times in a year, 5 times within the current and past 5 years, and 7 times in a lifetime. So law schools do see when you cancel an exam, and we do look at the number of times you've taken the LSAT. But at Loyola, we consider your highest score. You know, and if you do have 7 exams, we're going to look at each exam more carefully than if you had just taken the exam twice. The writing exam of the LSAT is, it opens 8 days in advance of the LSAT. It is a writing prompt with 2 options that you can select. Of those, you get to select option A or B, and then you kind of have to advocate for the position that you are choosing in this writing prompt. Your CAS report is not released until this writing prompt is completed. So, you know, all of your components for your application could be submitted, but if you don't complete the writing portion, we will not receive your CAS report and your application will remain incomplete. Transcripts. So a word about grades. At Loyola, we look at your cumulative GPA. So that means if you attended any community colleges, if you attended any summer courses anywhere else than Loyola Marymount, those grades will be taken into consideration, even if you just received a pass or a transfer over. So we're going to look at your entire cumulative GPA. We also look at grade trends. So if your grades started out not so great your freshman year, but you have an upward grade trend, we're going to see that. If your grades were not great, later in your college career, we will also see that. And we do encourage addendums if there was one semester that wasn't so strong or anything like that. So to kind of explain the situation. We do accept graduate transcripts, but they are not required. The application packet. So the packet itself is the e-app, which is the electronic app. On this application packet, you're going to select whether you're applying to the day program, the evening program, or both. If you are a reapplicant, there is a place to indicate that you're reapplying to the law school. It also asks what year you previously applied and what your decision status was. And finally, there is a whole section on character and fitness. This is comprised of questions that contain information about any academic probation, any academic disciplinary issues, any criminal history, anything like that. So you are required by the state of California to disclose all of this information, and you will be required to attach an addendum. Your personal statement. So with the personal statement, this is probably one of the sections students find the most difficult because they don't know what to write about. But really, we want you to tell us about yourself in any manner that you choose to, but we want to hear your story in your voice. We want you to be authentic. And we also want you to submit a really well-written piece of writing. So have somebody else check your personal statement. We don't want you to use what you see on websites. There's plenty of websites that will say, hey, we'll write your personal statement for you. Don't do it. We've seen it all. Don't restate your resume. So each piece of your application is really, really important. It's an important piece of your puzzle. If you're going to use your personal statement to regurgitate your resume, that's a waste of that piece. So please tell us about yourself, but don't restate everything in your resume. If there's a specific job that you want to talk about or a specific experience at the job, that's great. But we don't need to know, like, during your freshman year of college, you did this, and sophomore year this, and so on, so on. Also, don't use the personal statement to complain or offer too many excuses. We want it to be a positive statement. As far as letters of recommendation, we accept up to 2 letters. We prefer academic or professional. So professors, TAs, advisors, all of that kind of thing, or supervisors, employers are great. We evaluate the quality of the relationship, not the title. So if you know a Supreme Court justice, but know them personally, not in a professional capacity, we would recommend that you choose a different recommender. Also, don't ask family, friends, relatives, your mom. We have seen these letters and they do not hold weight in the application cycle. As far as your resume and other addendum, your resume is optional but highly recommended. It really gives us the timeline of your work experience, any honors you've received, leadership positions, all of that kind of stuff. Keep it 1 to 2 pages in length. It does not need to be in legal format. It can be in standard resume format. Once you are at the law school, the Career Development Office will help you reformat it into a legal format. Addenda are optional unless they are character and fitness addenda. Then they are required. But if you have a low semester GPA, 1 semester where it really dropped and you had a death in the family, please attach an addendum and explain it to us. Or if you had more than a 3-point increase or decrease in your LSAT, you must explain what happened. Did you enroll in an LSAT prep course? Did you have technical difficulties during the exam? Anything? Did you wake up with the flu? You know, explain that situation. Keep it brief, only a paragraph or 2, and let us know the circumstances surrounding the situation. Also, any additional statements, diversity statements, first gen statements, we love to read those. Just make sure that they are a new piece of the puzzle and don't overlap with anything else in your application. And that is all I have. Do you have any questions?